Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast. BrightWord is a leading platform for diverse storytelling, where voices from all backgrounds can share their unique narratives and connect with readers from around the world. Follow our regular podcast updates, where we strive to foster a literary community that celebrates creativity, inclusivity, and the transformative power of literature. Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast. I'm your host, John Lobb, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Linda Dezenski, author of Persistence: Living an Authentic Life with a Disability. What's it really like to live with a disability? Linda pulls no punches in this raw and revealing memoir. Born with cerebral palsy, Linda takes us on a roller coaster ride through the ups and downs of life with a body that doesn't always cooperate and a society that often misunderstands. But persistence isn't just about struggles, it's a story of triumph. With humor and heart, Linda shares her light bulb moment. Disability doesn't define her, it's just a part of the package. Join us as we learn more about Linda's journey, from embracing her whole self and discovering her mission to help others do the same. Linda, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's our pleasure to speak with you, and perhaps we could kick it off by talking about the title of the book, Persistence. What exactly does persistence mean to you?
Well, in short terms, it means never give up. A lot of my life has been like that. A lot of times people with disabilities can't do the things they want to do in the first try. So I always talk about experimentation and having, try to have an open attitude, a fun attitude of, trying to make the recipe work. Persistence is really a theme that runs through also a lot of the barriers that we have if we have barriers in our life. And that could be a disability for some of the readers, or it could be something else that they are trying to address in their lives that has been challenging or difficult. So the theme of persistence really just means, you know, working at it and working at it until you figure it out.
I think you make a great point. Some people will have maybe a challenge that's more visible to others. Other people will have a challenge that no one can see, but they're still dealing with it. I think it's safe to say we all have challenges in life.
Never met a person who really wasn't dealing with something, whether it was something that was more social in the environment that they live in, or something that is more what would be considered a health condition or a disability. And it's also about how much people magnify it, if I could say that. It's a continuum. Like some people have health conditions and they take their medication or they do whatever they need to do and it doesn't affect their lives very much. And then other people are having a hard time just balancing, trying to figure out how to address whatever issues they have. And so it becomes more of a obstacle in a lot of cases.
Linda, the book is a very personal story. What inspired you to share so much of yourself in this book and to be so open?
Well, I thought, and I still think that a lot of people don't understand that living with a disability is more complicated. It is also more expensive, and there's a lot of barriers in the environment all the time. And so by sharing a lot of the personal details was just to give them an example of how, you can face a circumstance where something suddenly happens that day that really derails the whole day if you let it. And again, the theme of persistence being, all right, this thing happened to me today. I fell, I'm having a problem with my assistive technology. It's not working for me today or whatever. And I have a choice to make every day. Am I going to let this kind of derail what I'm trying to get accomplished? Or am I going to try to take it all in stride and continue on with less than desirable circumstances?
Absolutely. And you talk about navigating a world that wasn't built for you. And it makes me think back to, believe it or not, junior high school when they installed a wheelchair ramp up some steps into the junior high because they had a student arriving with the same condition that you have. And nobody had ever thought before about the fact that these steps would be a barrier to someone who cannot walk and cannot climb a step.
Yeah,
And I remember being, of course, kids at the time, we didn't fully understand or appreciate and thought to ourselves, oh boy, I'm so glad that's not me. But the fact is, that person was as smart as anybody, probably the smartest student of all they needed was a ramp to get into the school.
exactly.
Do you find that
Exactly.
throughout life that you're always looking for the ramp to be there and for people to understand that you might need a ramp while others use stairs and so forth?
Yeah, well, and I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is one of the oldest cities in the United States. And there's Revolutionary War stuff still around. And then there's some modern architecture as well. And, they don't make historical sites accessible that much because they can't interfere with the significance of the history of the building. They certainly wouldn't do that. But in other cases, it is a question of it's a very simple modification a lot of times. There's portable ramps these days. You don't even have to build a permanent one. Or, a lot of people think that every modification involves installing an accessible, expensive elevator. Well, maybe not, because if you can locate your activities on the first floor and someone can get in, then you don't have to worry about people using the upper floors of the building. So a lot about barriers and architecture in particular is very doable if you know the people to talk to about how to get it all done. And of course, in our country, there are tax benefits for making things accessible. And so we always try to educate about the availability of accessibility and why it was so important. And the thing about this is that if you have curb ramps or you have an elevator or you have any kind of accessible features, those are also going to benefit people who have to move carts from one building to another, or someone who has a baby stroller with their children in it and they need a ramp to get that stroller up over the curb so that they can enjoy whatever it is they're doing that day.
Absolutely. It benefits a lot of different people.
Yes, exactly. Older people who really don't want to deal with stairs anymore have the ramps they can use, you know? So it's all very appropriate, and people don't realize how convenient it can be. And also, I tell the storekeepers, if you have a ramp, you can just hose it off and it's clean. Whereas, if you have stairs, you have to sweep each stair and sometimes you have to scrub them. It's more inconvenient.
It's very true. Very true. Linda, you make the point that your disability is a part of your life, but it doesn't define who you are. Can you speak to us a little bit more about that point?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't something that I visualized in the beginning. When I realized I was really different wasn't really until I was 6 or 5 or 6. And then I walked at the age of 8. And so basically, for a lot of my growing up, very young child, I started to realize I was different. And then I guess when I started really getting out in public a lot more and seeing people and how they reacted to me, I realized I was really different. So for a long time, I was a people pleaser. I tried to make people comfortable with me. I tried to use humor and tried to set everybody else at ease. But when you're younger like that, that's a lot of responsibility to take on. Eventually, I got to the point that I was no longer in the segregated school for kids with disabilities, and I was in a regular public school program that was kids going to junior high and high school. And I was a social misfit. And I started to realize that, a world was opening up to me because I had this opportunity for a really great education that would eventually lead me into college and then graduate school and a great career. So I realized at that point that, my disability was only part of who I really was. And who I really was this person that was socialized by, you know, society and had the same hopes and dreams as everybody else. And now I was getting the opportunity through school and more social opportunities with quote unquote regular kids. And that led me to believe, hey, this disability isn't everything that my life needs to be about. I can still go on and have a great career and get a job. And I was happy to pay taxes after I started working because I figured I want to be a citizen who contributes like everybody else does.
Great point. What are some of the most common misperceptions that you've experienced that people have about those with disabilities or those who are, to your point, different, quote unquote?
Well, any difference can be looked upon by the general public as odd. A lot of times, if I'm out on the street, I feel like a space alien because I obviously walk differently and my eyes are pointing in different directions and my coordination isn't the best, so I'm jumpy jerky at different times. So people have they scream things at you like, "Get out of the street, you freak." And then the next couple of weeks later, I'm in the same spot and somebody will scream out the car window, "You inspire me." I've had people grab me and try to pray with me, and one woman tried to exorcise my demons. I've had crazy stuff happen to me on the street. And that all goes to the fact that I think our biggest barriers are some of the misconceptions and the attitudes that people have about disability. Some people are afraid of it. Some people have to be confronted with it because maybe they've always feared that they're going to be less able someday. Other people, they have all kinds of questions, a lot of times very obnoxious personal questions. Although I put a lot of personal stuff in the book. I did that for a reason because I was trying to answer some questions that I always get asked. But, so it's always very difficult to manage other people's reactions to you.
Imagine. And,
And,
and it's not
you
something
know,
you can
the
control.
other part of it is people have hidden disabilities or they have something that they're hiding that they don't want people to know. And you can never assume when you're talking to someone what their circumstances may be. And my biggest message is about tolerance and patience. Okay, I look different. So could you please take another 5 minutes to get to know me before you want to blow right by me because you don't want to stop and get to know who I am? And people these days, there's a resurgence, I think, of worrying about where people come from and, what they're doing here and all of these things about immigration and all that. That's basically the same kind of thing. It's like, we seem to have so many fears about people who are different or have different backgrounds. And that's why it's important to me to have written this book. And especially at this time that it's published now, I have an opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute, be patient, take a second glance, get to know people for who they are. And you might find that people are in your life at that moment for a reason to teach you something you didn't know before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you talk about strangers wanting to pray with you or exercise you, it makes me chuckle because I'm thinking, you don't need saving,
No.
Thanks, but no thanks, right?
Well, she came up to me first and she said, can I pray with you? I said, sure. I'm Christian. If you want to pray with me, great. So then after it was over, which was a very long time, and we're standing in the middle of the street, not on the sidewalk, but so after it was over, she asked me, how do you feel? And I said, nice and warm. And she took that, her eyes got really wide, and she took that to mean that I had some demon that needed to be exorcised. And she held me by the shoulders, which at that time I was walking with crutches. So if you wanted to incapacitate me, just grab me by the shoulders. I'm there's a crowd gathering, and I'm trying to give like a message with my eyeballs, like, can somebody come up here and interrupt this process because this woman is not letting me go? Then finally she was done, and I said goodbye, and I took off as fast as I could. Meanwhile, a guy that was next to me that whole time, I was like, why didn't you say something? It was crazy. It was a crazy thing. I never forgot it. Never forgot. I had to put it in the book.
I can understand. Probably is that the most misunderstood you think you've ever been?
That's a good question. I had a lot of stuff happen to me when I was a kid. When I was in the hospital once, not understanding that I was spastic, I was dozing, and a nurse was trying to get me ready for a procedure. So she decided she was going to sneak up behind me and try to stick this needle in my butt. She startled me so much, literally, that I jumped. The needle jumped and flew across the room. She didn't know what to do with me. I was screaming bloody murder because I didn't know what that was.
I don't
And
blame you.
when my mother finally came in, I was probably 5 or 6 at the time. They used to put me to sleep to do dental work. My mother came in and she wanted to know, what happened? You're so upset. And I told her, and she went out there and she got that nurse and she said, you never do that to a child like that. You don't. A real startle can cause all kinds of, potential injury. Like I could fall out of my chair. I could really injure myself just because it's not just part of me, it's my whole body. That's part of the brain injury thing. It kind of gets generalized to your whole body. And that's another point. When somebody has a disability, a lot of times people generalize it to their whole being. There are symptoms where disability shows in your entire body, but there are disabilities that just because you're diabetic or something doesn't mean that you have any less intellectual ability or any of that. So be careful not to generalize the disability too much to the whole entire being of the person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's part of who you are, but it is not all of who you are.
Yes. And like I said, if people get to know someone with a disability in their life, in their church, in their local grocery store, they run into someone, give them a chance to tell you what help they need from you, if any, before you just dive in and provide what you think is assistance.
And make assumptions.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
always say about assumptions. We don't want to do that.
exactly. Exactly. Well, you do have snippets of humor in the book, and it sounds like humor has been one way that you've coped or dealt with life. Can you talk about
Absolutely.
that? How maybe keeping a smile on your face or keeping a lighthearted view sometimes helped you deal with a situation that you were trying to manage through?
Yeah, you have to approach it like an experiment. And then you have to approach it like an experiment that could fail. And when those experiments fail, it could be very funny, like the time I was trying to cook and a pie in the refrigerator came flying out of the refrigerator and landed, of course, face down on the floor. So there's this apple pie that's all over the floor. And of course, you know, I was giggling because I only went into the refrigerator to make a sandwich. So lunch that day was apple pie. I didn't eat apple pie for a while after that because there was too much in it. But, you have to have that sense of wonder and possibility. Like, if you want to motivate me to do something, tell me you think I can't.
Love
And
it.
then it's on. It's
I
on,
love
baby. Now I'm gonna figure out a way right then because I'm stubborn. If I wasn't stubborn, listen, that's persistence, right? You have to be stubborn to try to figure out a way to get it done because, darn it, you got to try it. You got to do it because if somebody tells you you can't, especially when you're a kid, you're going to say, well, you can tell me no, but I'm going to do it anyway. You know,
I love it. Did some of your persistence come from your mother? It sounds like she was
absolutely. My mother, my goodness, I think of my mother every day because she was stubborn as all get out. And she was stubborn until the end of her life when we were trying to keep her safe. She never changed her personality. She developed dementia. And when she could no longer keep herself safe, we had to make sure that we put measures in place that she couldn't go anywhere she wasn't supposed to go. She wandered, that kind of stuff. But people don't understand. I say my mother was in there to the very end. My mother was there because that's the woman she was before she developed this condition. And people don't understand. My mother worked with a lot of men in a department store, a particular department, which was appliances, which was, they were mostly sold by men. And she was the only woman in there. And they used to give her a hard time. And she worked that job because she wanted to prove to everybody she was going to do it. And she made good money. And that's how my parents went on their trips. They went to Hawaii and everywhere because my mother was selling these refrigerators and ovens and all that stuff. And she was raking in the commission and she was very successful.
good for her. Good for her. And she obviously was very successful in raising a daughter as well.
Well, she was very successful in raising both of us. My brother was born premature, as I was also born premature. And he was very, very tiny. And when he was born, they didn't even know he would survive. And so he didn't come home from the hospital for a while. And they had to almost force him to eat. And then later on, he was this big guy and he was a cook and he cooked and he was in the Navy and he did all these wonderful things and he saw the world and there was no stopping him. He was stubborn too. He was going to do anything he wanted to do. Comes as a family trait.
That's wonderful. So you talk about being on a mission to help others who are different, so to speak, and to help them live authentically. Can you talk a little bit more about that mission?
Yes, I want people to feel more comfortable in their own skin, which means that they may have to go through a process where they really acknowledge what they can and can't do. It may be painful, but in the end, it's like, okay, so you need help doing certain things. So get that help. You can still supervise. You're not giving up your authority just because you bring people in to help you do things that you're having difficulty with. Um, but understand, we all coexist. Wouldn't repair my own refrigerator. I wouldn't repair my own roof. I'm going to get people in to do that stuff for me. So what's the difference if you also need somebody to help you with your banking, or you might need help making decisions even because you don't have that life experience? So if you bring people in to help you, as long as you're supervising, you're still calling the shots. As long as you're making the request and saying, well, I really need this done by Tuesday or whatever, you're calling the shots. So it's only a matter of degree. Like we were saying a few minutes ago, it's a continuum. Ability is a continuum. And as you age, you may change, your abilities may change. Or you develop an illness or you have an accident or something and you have to make adjustments. But the thing is, you always have the ability inside you as long as you tap into it. But learning to accept what you can and can't do is a process that you have to go through. And for people who acquire an injury, I tell them, go through all the grief. Just, don't judge yourself. Just go through all the grief. And when you're ready, you're going to find ways of going back to your life at the point that you were so rudely interrupted by whatever, and you're going to find a way to get it done. There's a video that I talk about in the book, which was a dancer who had a car accident and had a spinal cord injury. And she was a ballerina, and she learned how to dance in a new way. And the point is, she was still a dancer, and she figured it out. And that's what we all need to do. And why do we have to say, I can't do that? Why can't we find ways of getting things done? If the world was a little bit more tolerant of something that might look a little different, then people would be more successful because they could just adapt things to their ability and keep going.
Absolutely. So it sounds like acceptance by others starts with accepting yourself.
That is so true, because I've realized that some of the reason why people don't listen is because they're so focused on what are they going to say or what are they going to do next. And, I wish we could all just slow down and have, more face-to-face conversations and not get so twisted up by social media, and just get to know people.
Absolutely. Linda, if there's one thing that you would hope somebody takes from your book, one idea, one message, what would that be?
Never give up. If it doesn't work today, you'll figure it out tomorrow. Sometimes you can go on and try different things differently, and you'll find that it works. Or call in an expert. You don't have to fix the roof. Get somebody else to do. Don't waste so much time on thinking, be more spontaneous and do more.
Wonderful. Linda, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today and learning more about your life, your successful life, and your successful book, I'm sure. The book is Persistence, and we've been visiting with Linda Dezenski. And Linda, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful discussion, and I'm
Thank
sure
you.
our listeners and viewers today will be eager to get their hands on the book and learn more about your journey and the inspiring message that you have for all of us, really, those with visible disabilities and all of us with hidden internal challenges, because we sure as heck all have them.
That's right. Thank you very much. I enjoyed
Thank
it.
you. And thank you all for joining us today. This has been the BrightWord Books Podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode. You've been listening to the BrightWord Books Podcast, home of the literary community that celebrates creativity, inclusivity, and the transformative power of literature. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss future episodes. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.